Please have a seat. And let's bow down our heads for a moment of prayer. Ever loving, gracious God, we thank you this day, God, for making this day possible. We thank you for allowing us to see yet another day. And we thank you for that abundant grace of yours that always surrounds us in all that we do and say. God, we come this morning lifting our heads up to you and saying, God, you know wherever we are in our walk with you. And wherever we are in our walk with you, God, what we'd appreciate you reminding us is that, like we've always asked, that your grace is sufficient for us. Whether in good health, whether uncertain about what the future holds. Whatever that is going on, God, we say, through it all, remind us that your grace is sufficient for us. God, at this moment, we lift our friends and family members here and outside, asking for those that are sick, that God, your mercies, your healing mercies will be showered on them, and that they shall be at peace with themselves and with you. God, for our friends and family members who are traveling in different parts of the world during this summer season, those are friends that are on vacation in other places, and our children, God, we say, be with them and protect them and bring them home safely. God, for our children and family members who are in different parts of the world where wars are being fought or tragedies are taking place, God, we say, grant us the peace to be able to hope that it's all going to be okay with them. It's all going to be all right. It is going to be all right because you, God, are present in all aspects of our lives and in the lives of our children, in the lives of our family members. God, for the names that have been lifted up this morning that are sick, we are asking that, God, you will be with the families, you will be with the friends. Again, God, when it's all been said and done, we know we serve a wonderful, gracious, compassionate God, one who has promised to stand by us in every aspect of our lives. Help us to take that knowledge in deeply so that in moments of uncertainty, in moments of not knowing what lies ahead, we can reach deep into our soul and remind ourselves that we serve a mighty, compassionate God. And with that, God, we join in saying the prayer that our Lord has taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Would the ushers please come forward? bow down our heads for a moment of prayer. Dear God, bless this offering. Bless whatever it's going to be used for. In your Son's name. And let us say amen. Amen. Please have a seat.
Our Old Testament this morning is from the book of Ecclesiastes, and it is probably familiar to all of us. I would imitate the birds and sing turn, 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 but this is just to be read. For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. But now I gave you an earworm, huh? A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear, a time to sow, a time to keep silence, and a time to speak. And I can see so many parallels to our everyday lives with this, as we talked about the garden and somebody pilfering tomatoes, and we talked about embracing and not embracing, and as the rummage sale approaches, a time to throw away and a time to keep. So the scripture continues to speak to us in our everyday life. The psalm this morning is responsive. Oh, give thanks to the Lord who is good, whose steadfast love endures forever. Some wandered in the desert wastes, finding no way to a city in which to dwell. Then, in their trouble, they cried to the Lord, who delivered them from their distress. Let them thank the Lord for his steadfast love, for his wondrous works to humankind. The epistle lesson this morning is from the book of Colossians. So if you have been raised with Christ, seek the things that are above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things that are above, not on things that are on earth, for you have died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, is revealed, then you also will be revealed with him in glory. Put to death, therefore, whatever in you is earthly: fornication, impurity, passion, evil desire, and greed, which is idolatry. On account of these, the wrath of God is coming on those who are disobedient. These are the ways you also once followed when you were living that life. But now you must get rid of all such things: anger, wrath, malice, slander, and abusive language from your mouth. Do not lie to one another, seeing that you have stripped off the old self with its practices and have clothed yourselves with the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge according to the image of its creator. In that renewal, there is no longer Greek and Jew, circumcised and uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave and free, but Christ is all and in all.
So as you may have noticed in the bulletin, this section, we are going to read the scriptures, but later it's going to be later on. But I'm going to perhaps introduce what we are trying to do today, and that is to let us know, at least have a conversation, sometimes a conversation that most people do not have. And so let me put this in context. A few weeks ago, I think Tara and I and Ray were standing outside having a conversation about the pamphlets, the booklets that you was just passed out. She had already mentioned that at his church council meeting, but in that meeting, that brings us to the conversation. And in that conversation, I did say that, I did suggest that it would be a better idea for us all to have this general idea, and then she talks about some of her own ideas with us. Now, I have to tell you this. I have often believed that you do not make plans about your future, especially person aware. I come from a tradition that says that you don't talk about those things. If it happens, it happens. But also, then I have discovered that we buy life insurance. I buy life insurance. It's a form of planning. I mean, you don't want to talk about it, but it's a form of planning. And so when I thought this may be, well, we may not, I guess let me put it in a different way. One of the difficulties I have is that in my job, when I have gone to visit people that are on their deathbed, and then I get families and I will be talking, and then we get to the point of talking about the person. And I have felt a little bit uncomfortable because it's been said that the person that even though their eyes may be closed, they are hearing what we are saying. And so I do not wish oftentimes to have that conversation while the person is laying in bed. But I thought if we did it this way, and all of us have the conversation, I'm not saying go die on me tomorrow, but at least we can have that conversation and have some things in place. Some of you may know this and have all of this in place already. But for those of us who do not know or are still thinking about what to do, this may be times when we have that conversation. So for today, Tara is going to be leading the conversation, and then we've invited other guests to lead us, and she'll be introducing them. So at this time, I'd like to invite Tara to come up.
Stand on my stool again. Us sharp people. Well, today, as Pastor said, we wanted to have an informational service about preparing for the end of life. How many of you can say you are prepared to die? It's a hard question to answer, and not everyone wants to talk about it, as Pastor has said. But I feel it should be a subject that should be discussed and shared. How many of you have prepared for events in your life, your education, finding a job, getting married, having children, raising your children, taking vacations, and your retirement? We prepare for these events during our life, so why not prepare for the end, which is a definite event in our lives? In the June issue of the ARP Bulletin, they reported that only 10% of people of ages 70 to 80 are afraid of death. Yet it's not until their 80s that many people reported making the necessary plans that will help their families and medical team understand and carry out their end-of-life wishes, as well as plans for their assets, funeral, and burial. So why not start earlier? In Sweden, they have a saying that suggests at the age of 65, you should begin death cleaning. It is a sensible way to approach your belongings as you enter the later years of your life. The idea is to declutter your life before you die, to release the burden from the loved ones you leave behind. They suggest several steps to prepare. Let your loved ones know you are ready. Get your family involved. Slowly go through your personal possessions, donate, sell, gift your items to family and friends, and keep mementos for yourself. Our church rummage sale is a great place to start donating. They suggest to declutter regularly. Once a year, go through your closets, your attic, your basements, all the other places in your house that you're no longer using items. And then make a list of important documents and make a hard copy of your computer passwords, financial documents, and other things. The Swedish death cleaning isn't morbid, it's a way of living. So another way to prepare is to use the booklet that we've passed out today, Expression of My Personal Wishes for Procedures at the Time of Death. I attended a workshop here at the church many years ago where we received this booklet, and thank you to Sue who updated it for us now. It is an excellent way to let your family know your wishes. When we were preparing for my father's death not too long ago, we used this booklet to write down what Mom and Dad wanted, especially for the memorial service. Also, Mom and Dad had contacted Congdon several years ago and actually prepaid for their cremation. It was very helpful to us girls to have all this taken care of in advance. I know my children will be happy not to have to make decisions at my time of death. I have a binder. I think being that teacher in me, I have a binder ready with everything in it. My will, my obituary, the booklet filled out, and all the other information that my family is going to need. So, and I also want to tell Pastor, thank you again for coming to visit my father at the end. And some of you know, if you're here for the memorial service, that when Pastor was praying with him and we were all gathered around him, my dad woke up from his subconsciousness sleep and actually smiled as Pastor was praying and talking to him. And so that is so important to have someone able to come to your home or to wherever you're at the end of your life and have that connection and that ticket to heaven, as I said, Pastor gave my dad. So please take the time to prepare with your help, get your family to help you. It's a hard conversation to have, but so important and a relief to all to have it ready because we never know when our time to die will happen. So I think at this time, if you want to look briefly at your booklet, and we'll just take a few minutes to glance at it, and then at the end, if you have more questions, we can have a question and answer time. Of course, there's the personal information in there, the important paper section where your will is located, and those important papers. Then the arrangement of your body, what you're planning to do. If you're an organ donor, you're donating your body, you want it cremated, you want to be buried, who your funeral director will be, what type of service you want to have. And then if there is a service, your favorite scriptures, your favorite hymns, any poems that you would like read or prayers said, hymns that are sung by the congregation or a soloist. Then also your memorials and your flowers. Those are really important things too. And then make sure that you list your other family members that would need to know this information or be contacted. And then sign and date it. And it's not to say that this is something that you have to do, but that you could update it at another time. So, like I said, if you have any questions later about that, we can answer them for you. So at this time, I think it is Ray Kiefer's turn to come up.
We're going to read the gospel reading for today, and my Bible titles it The Rich Fool. It's Luke 12:13-21. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Friends, Who set me to be a judge and an arbitrator over you? And he said to them, take care, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist of the abundance of its possessions. Then he told them a parable. The land of a rich man produced abundantly, and he thought to himself, what should I do? For I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones, and there you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich toward God. So, my testimonial, you may sit. Oh, I'm sorry. The Word of God for the people of God. Yeah, I'm not used to that. Okay. Okay, one thought as I was listening to Terrell, I got to bring this up because if my wife is listening, she would get a big kick out of Terrell said to declutter once a year. She would be cracking up, or I'm going to hear it when I get home. Anyway, I'm going to read the end of that once more. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich toward God. That's it. It's over. You will speak no more. Therefore, if you're going to try to do something before you die, that's when you have to do it. And it could happen tonight. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen in years from now. We don't know, and I don't think most of us want to know. Have you ever tried to bring it up, death, with your family before you pass? I have, and I get comments like, I'll say like, hey guys, let's talk about what to do when I die. And I'll get a comment like, Dad, I don't want to talk about that. Then you start thinking, what do I care? I'm going to be dead. Who cares? It's not my problem. So, but then sometimes things click. And I've had a couple of times when it's clicked. The accountant that we used for our business when we had it, him and I made a pact one time because neither one of us had a will. And we agreed that if one of us got one set up, we would call the other one, and he needed to get it done also. So he called me one day. He said, I got it done. Would you like a phone number? So I did. I called, and we set it up, and that felt good. The next time, I was going to a family get-together, small family get-together in Aurora. My sister had talked to me, and we decided to go to the graveyard where our mom was buried in 2018. And I got to thinking on the way out there, might be a good time to talk to somebody about a burial plot and what to do. So I made the phone call as I was going down there, and I ended up making an appointment to go in and see him after we got to the cemetery. So when my sister got at the cemetery, we walked around. We found tons of relatives and friends that we knew because we were raised in Aurora. It's a big cemetery, and the section where my mom and stepdad are is called the Old Rugged Cross. Mom had one thought process when she got buried. She wanted to be buried in the Old Rugged Cross section. So my sister had gotten plots there close to hers. And I started thinking. When I came down here, I was only thinking about a grave for me because my wife, Nancy, is not sure what she wants to do, and she wants to be cremated. And then I found out when I talked to the counselor from the cemetery that you can actually bury a person in addition to putting another person in there who was cremated, or you can do 2 cremations in a grave. So that kind of made sense. And I thought, well, I found a plot that was just a single plot that was close to Mom. I thought this would be good. Then on the way home, I started thinking, what about the kids? I thought, they never want to talk about it. But I don't remember if it was on the way home or if it was the next day, but it was very shortly thereafter. I called them. Called the older daughter first. She was with her husband. I brought it up. She didn't shut me down. She actually said, that sounds pretty good. Brought it up to her husband, my son-in-law. He said, that actually sounds pretty good. I was shocked. I'm like, wow, we're halfway there. So I called the younger daughter. Same scenario. I told her about the plots, and I said, would you be interested in being buried at the cemetery as well? Because they'd been down there a number of times for family funerals and stuff. And she said, yeah, that actually sounds pretty good. Then I talked to my son-in-law. He said the same thing. I'm like, wow. Things do work sometimes. So we ended up getting plots there in the old rugged cross section. And like I say, sometimes things just work. Today may be an opportunity. We're bringing it up to you. It might be something that you might want to consider if you haven't already done it. And so, for those of you who have put something in place, rest easy. Praise the Lord. For those of you who have not, maybe now is the time to think about it. Praise the Lord. And I want to read that first part one more time in the gospel reading of Luke 12. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Friend, who set me to be a judge or an arbiter over you?" And with that, I would like to introduce our next speaker from Condon's Funeral Home, and that would be Denora. So Denora's on her way down now, and she'll give you some brief information. Thank you.
Good morning. So I'm not used to leading you from up here. I'm usually over on the side and waiting for the service to end and lead from there. So you'll have to forgive me. I'm not much of a public speaker. But just to introduce myself, I'm Dinora Congdon Metcalf. I'm the owner and operator of Congdon Funeral Home here, right across the street. Just a bit of background and history. My grandfather, Everett Congdon, started the funeral home in 1939. He was well known for his hard work and was respected by many in the community. Following his early and untimely death, his wife Evangeline kept the business going and continued running it along with her eldest son, Ardsley. My father, Lauren, joined full-time in the late 60s and continued operating the funeral home with Artie until Artie's untimely passing in 2002. Like my father and uncle, I've been working in the family business since I was old enough to operate a vacuum and a dust cloth. Throughout high school, my siblings and I did the yard maintenance and kept up the grounds. So I'm very proud of our 83-year history here in the community, and hope that I can keep the third generation just as reliable and as respected as the past. Definitely have some big shoes to fill. So I've been asked to speak today about pre-planning for our end-of-life needs. That is obviously a loaded conversation and includes many variables from person to person. The nice part about pre-planning and having these conversations with family and friends now, when the time comes for someone to make our funeral arrangements, there will be an understanding of what we wanted, what was important to us personally. That may vary, obviously, from person to person, and husband to wife and brother to sister. Everybody has their own idea of what they want. That's where my staff and I come in. We recommend to meet with a funeral home of your choice. Bring your thoughts and wishes to us. Put it down on paper. We'll ask a bunch of questions and walk you through each step of funeral planning process, from death certificates to obituaries, flowers, charitable donations, anything that you would want to see anywhere. Just saw recently that a lady decided that she was going to raffle off her Volkswagen Beetle at her funeral. So if you attended her funeral, you were in the raffle for her car. You can do what you want, how you want, and there's really no limit. You control the process, you control the conversation, if you have that conversation. If you don't have the conversation, your family controls it. So if that's okay with you, that's good too, but sometimes you might want to be involved in it. I have people come in and just tell us where they'd like to be buried, and that's it. And I write it down, and I keep it in file, and that's what we know. I also have people come in and tell me every step of the process, from the time of their passing to placing the grave marker and everything in between. And that's cool. It's neat to see, that they were involved and they wanted what they wanted was actually put into place. My recommendation is to start with the biggest question. The one question is burial or cremation. Obviously, there's a second or the third choice too of donation of you could donate your body to science as well. Ultimately, that becomes a cremation in the end. So really, it comes down to burial or cremation. And then from there, the choices can include open casket service with a burial or cremation to follow, closed casket service with a burial or cremation to follow, a direct burial or a direct cremation with a memorial service, photos, maybe an urn up front. Will your services be held at a church or at the funeral home? Maybe you don't want any services. You can have no services and just have a burial cremation, obituary notice in the paper or not. It's really up to you. Another thing would be donation of your body to science, and then maybe a memorial gathering or a memorial service. Some people have been doing, through the pandemic, we've seen a lot of change in the way that services are done, and you can have a funeral service in a park, at a pavilion. You can have a pastor come out and, have your eulogy done there. It's really up to you. As you can see, there are many options, and every person has the ability to choose what fits them. Once we have your wishes on paper, we offer the option to prepay for services. Prepaying with us not only removes the stress from ones we leave behind, but it also locks in today's costs. And these days, we know that things can go up in a matter of minutes, big time. If you do prepay with us at our funeral home, your money is placed into a trust account in your name. The funds are held by a third-party trust company, so in the event that we were to go out of business, or if you decided to move to Florida and use a different funeral home, it's completely transferable. So that's how we handle the money that we are given for people that trust us for their final expenses. Like I said before, though, you don't have to prepay to make advanced arrangements with us. You can come in and have a conversation with us. We will write down whatever we talk about and have it on file for your loved ones when it's needed. You may have a life insurance policy or a financial advisor that's holding funds, or, there's so many different things, so you don't necessarily have to prepay to start the conversation with a funeral home. The book that they gave out today is amazing, and I was actually thinking I could probably use it to plan funerals with people. So very, very nice. And then I also brought, over on the front pew here, I brought some books, brochures. This is just kind of a continuation of the book that they gave you. Gives you a little more of the funeral home part of it. So very informative, and you can take a few of those on your way out. It's got my card in there as well. And as always, my staff and I are always available, even if you just want to call and have a conversation, ask a couple questions. We're always available, and we're always happy to help. So with that, I want to thank you for having me today. Thank you, Pastor. And that's it. Thank you.
Where I'm coming from today, basically, my wife died a few months ago, and I just came from the First United Methodist Church where we were in the choir, we are in the choir, and basically the women's choir gave an anthem in honor of Betsy, my wife, today. That's why I'm a little bit late. I can add personal reaction to the Cogden Funeral Home is when Betsy died a few months ago, I was not in any frame to look at cremation, caskets, or anything. I couldn't have done it except that about 2 years previously, Betsy and I had really sat down and we had decided. She picked out her urn, she picked out the color of her urn, where we were being buried. Everything was prepaid and arranged. So when she passed away very unexpectedly, it was just a simple call and to the funeral home and cemetery, and it was all taken care of. I don't think I could have gotten through it. So I really emphasize that you should look at it. I've been asked to talk very quickly on wills. I am a retired attorney, so anything I give you here, you know, I'm not giving you legal advice. I'm just trying to educate you at this point. How many of you have wills? Oh, well, I guess that's all I need to. For those of you who do not, I guess the question is, do I need a will? And of course, the answer is 2 words: it depends. There are certain myths about wills, and you may not, you may have these ideas and not realize it, even if you have a will. If I do not have a will, is all my property going to the state? No. No, it will never go to the state. First of all, a will only passes property that's in your name alone, okay? But almost everybody, 98% of your property is held either jointly, usually with spouses, you own jointly, joint accounts, joint stocks, you know, joint, everything is joint. So it goes to the other one automatically. So if one of you dies, it does not. Of course, once one has died, then you have to think too. Number 2, most of assets that you have, a lot of people's, the biggest asset they have is their retirement plan or an IRA. And these are usually, there's a beneficiary that you must put on there, and that's a good thing. I have contingent beneficiaries as well, which you should have. Then you don't have to worry about it. So life insurance, the same thing, a beneficiary. Or a lot of your accounts can be in POD, payable on death, or TOD, transfer on death. In Illinois, they recently passed a statute that says that you can put it into TOD so that upon your death, for your real estate, for your house, before there was anything, the house will automatically go to whoever you mention in as a TOD. Instead of putting it in joint and having certain tax problems with it, it's TOD. You own it, you can sell it without having to get permission because you own it totally by yourself. So the other thing is that if you have no will, the property passes by what is called intestacy. In other words, the state has certain laws that say that if you have no will and the property is only owned by you alone, you don't have the POD or the beneficiary or the joint,
then it goes by these rules, which basically half goes to your spouse and half to your children if you have children. If either of those you don't have, then it all goes to the other. If it doesn't, then it goes to your brothers and sisters, your parents, goes up your grandparents, then down through your cousins, so that unless everybody has relatives, okay, and in this day and age, and they can be found. So if you died tomorrow without a will, it would go to your heirs, if you didn't own the property jointly or whatever. What it does not do is, some people don't want to leave everything to their third cousin twice removed, right? So you should think about it, and at that point, you should definitely, I would say, do a POD on your accounts to the people that you wanted, or joint or whatever, or in a will. Also, if you're you want to leave something to a charity, then you need a will, obviously, or you make it POD or transfer in death to the charity, like Salvation Army or a church, right? Basically, one of a really nice thing that you should keep in mind from a tax standpoint is that if you leave, put a percentage of your IRA, so let's say you made your church the beneficiary, the church will get it and not have to pay any income tax. Anyone else inheriting a non-charitable would have to pay tax. So you're doubling the gift or the bequest to the charity, whether it's the church or whether it's Salvation Army. Another myth is people think that if I have a will, I'll avoid probate and all of its costs. Who believes that? Of course, I call it a myth, so no one should believe it, right? The whole purpose of a will is the will has to be probated in order to make it effective. That's why I certainly encourage that you put everything in these joint beneficiary POD and that will. I'm not going to get into trusts at all. That's too complicated, and I only have 3 more minutes. But certainly, you'll avoid the costs if you have it in joint, and it's almost automatic. Most of my estate, I'm not having any problems with my wife having passed away because everything was in joint. And we also had contingency beneficiaries, my children, on almost everything. And then you say, oh, if I have a will, I can avoid death taxes. No. Everyone says that what's always certain is death and taxes. So death taxes certainly is going to affect you, okay? However, right now, you have to have for the federal death tax, estate tax, you have an exemption with you and your wife, a total of $22 million. Now, how many have over $22 million? Right, okay. For the state inheritance tax, the amount is $4 million. How many have over $4 million? Or actually, with your wife, it can be $8 million. Okay, so no one worries about it. However, what Congress giveth, Congress taketh away. So please be aware of what is happening with Congress when they start fiddling around with the tax code, okay? Because that could be, right now, if they reduce the estate tax exemption, and it was $600,000 only a few years ago, back in 2010. If they reduce it back down, if they did, there'd be an outcry, I would hope. But if they did reduce it down, you could pay 40-50% in estate tax. All your estate would go to the government. And I don't know if you want the government to have it over your kids, but that's up to you. Good patriot probably want to see that they spend it so wisely, right? Okay, so basically that's all I'm going to hit on right now. There are things that you can't really do a whole heck of a lot on estate tax, except make sure you have a big exemption, and we have that. So right now you don't need to worry about it. Okay, you don't even have to file a return. I don't have to file a return. So basically, should you have a will, let me put it this way. It's kind of a safety net just in case you forgot something, that you have like your car's in your name, right? So you don't have to worry about it. There is a law called the Small States Affidavit, which says you don't have to probate if your estate is under $100,000 total, okay? That's anything that's in your name, not joint property, not personal property, or whatever. So your car would come under it, and you know they have a form for cars to pass away with by signing the Small States Affidavit. If you have the will, you attach it to it, and your will leaves everything to your wife. That's even better. Although you don't need the signature of your kids in order to get rid of the car. So that's why I'm just, you know, I'm pointing that out. So that's all, and I'll be around if anyone has any questions.
Yes, we have, we agreed 5 minutes for questions and answers, and can you please stay around a little bit for people that may want to ask questions after the service. So are there any questions in the audience?
Right around $2,000 here in this area. Obviously, the closer to Chicago or Milwaukee, the bigger cities are going to be more expensive. The, you know, go out in more rural areas, and it might be a little bit less. An open casket service with a cremation to follow, you're probably around $5,000 to $6,000. I'm talking total, not just what you're paying us as a funeral home, but I'm talking flowers and you know, fees for honorariums, death certificates, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So. And then once you get into a full burial, you're probably going to be around $6,000 to $7,000 plus cemetery fees if that's the way you decide to go. So.
You know, librarians answer questions, but they also ask them. The other question is, how does one give one's body to science? Let's say you die at the hospital. So the hospital knows this, you know this, who is supposed to know and get that working, and who actually transports the body to whomever, and who is whomever? Science is a pretty general term.
So one of the biggest ones in our area, in Chicago, right out of Chicago, is the Anatomical Gift Association of Illinois. You can pre-register with them. There is no charge to, so people will say there's no charge to donate your body to science, but we have to get your body to them. We have to do the death certificate and the paperwork and all of that. So ultimately, it usually ends up to be right around the same cost as a cremation. So usually between $1,500 and $2,000. A lot of that is for the transportation, permits, paperwork, and all of that kind of stuff. So the Anatomical Gift Association of Illinois, then we would transport your body to science. I believe they say anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 years. I mean, there's no given amount of time that they don't tell you when your family is going to receive your cremated remains back. So they could keep you for a couple weeks, they could keep you for a couple years. And then what they will do is do a cremation once they are through with their research, and then they would send your cremated remains back to whoever you have designated. So that's kind of how that process works. There are other places, colleges and things like that, that do different donations. Usually you want to register ahead of time with something like that. But if you haven't, we can always try to see, if it's possible and try to accommodate that. But a lot of people that are going to donate to science usually will research it and just kind of pick which place they want, depending on what they're looking for. So I hope that kind of answers your questions. Did I miss anything?
Along with that, if you are an organ donor, that's, I guess, done at the hospital, not
Okay, yeah, so an organ donor, there's a lot of different aspects to the organ donation process. First of all, that you, trying to think of which way to start with this. So let's say that I have on the back of my driver's license that I'm an organ donor. Doesn't necessarily mean that my organs are gonna be used. The death has to be in a way that they are able to use your organs, usually. So there's a few different things. If you were in a hospital, like on life support, or, and your family has made the decision to remove you from life support, you can, at that time, decide to donate organs because there's viable living organs, I would say. But then there's also the after your passing. So if you had, an accident or something like that, a sudden death, and then they decided that you were a candidate, they would approach your family to make that decision for you. At that point, they usually would pick your body up from the hospital. So that is called the Gift of Hope out of Illinois, and then there's one out of Wisconsin as well. They would pick your body up from the hospital and take you to their facility, usually in Chicago area, and do the donation. They go over with your family specific organs, so you can opt for or against certain parts of your organs or skin or tissue or bones. There's a lot to it. They kind of walk your family through all of that. So you have that option to approve or deny. And I was actually able to do that when my uncle passed. I was able to sit with my cousins and just kind of hear that whole process. And it was really interesting because they really did give you the option of what you wanted to do. They didn't just do what they wanted to. They gave you the option of what you wanted to donate, what you were comfortable with. So once that process is done, then the transportation back to the funeral home is usually done by Gift of Hope. That's when we would receive your body and then go forward with whatever you want to do. You can still do open casket services after donation, or after organ or tissue donation. It is still possible to do that. Sometimes people will say you can't, but it's definitely possible. So I think, was there anything else that I missed on that?
Okay, on that
Okay.
note, here is what I'd like to suggest. We are going to bring the service to a close, unofficial, and there will not be, I'm requesting if you all can stay. So if you feel like leaving, you may do so now. Otherwise, if Mr. Stiles, Lenora, and Ray, if you want to stay and talk to the congregate people as they come out, that'd be. So officially, we are closed. And if you want to come forward and ask any questions, you can please do that.